So this episode is actually maybe a bit of a history lesson, sort of. Not so much riding in this one actually, so if you put off already, bye for now. If you're keen to stay and have a look at what we've got to say about this place, then keep watching. Hello, welcome to the channel. Thanks for tuning in, thanks for watching. So this week we're actually heading, and not far off, to New Norcia. New Norcia is I'd say, infamous Benedictine monk monastery. There was also nuns there. It was very much self-sufficient. So they grew all sorts of crops, all sorts of vegetables, even grew grapes for wine. So they were very much self-sufficient. But it has a dark side. The ride in here to New Norcia from Perth, it takes about an hour and a half. Today's been exceptionally windy, so quite an unpleasant ride actually. So we've ridden inland from where we are, just off the coast. Temperature there was about 25 degrees when we set off. We've been going roughly a good hour and 3/4, maybe 2 hours now. And inland we're at 31.5 degrees. So it's significantly warmer. So what we'll do is, we're very shortly there, we'll film everywhere where we go in this place. We're just coming into it now, and we'll just park up and we'll talk a bit about its history, both its good and its bad. You may see some of the monastery grounds here. So in the background is the main grounds for the whole monastery. I think I'm correct by calling it initially a monastery. And we're going to cross over the very, very quiet road. It is sort of sold as a tourist attraction these days, this place. But I don't think it's that popular amongst tourists. And again, I'll come to a reason as to possibly why. The reason we've come today is to tell more of the dark tale of this place. Now, just cresting above them trees, maybe that's the main old monastery bit. It's now a college, I believe. Parts of the lands have been sold off, and also Twiggy Forrester, I think, Triggy Forrest. I think he owns this place now, the land. So there's a bit of a checkered past into who owned it of past and who owns it today. And this place is on
quite a number of acreage. It's over significant acres. And what we'll see today, maybe only a third of it, if that. So there was an orphanage here in the, I think, late 1800s up until maybe the 70s, maybe a little bit beyond. And orphanage maybe not the correct word to use. So this really is about the history of, some would say it's the stolen generation. I think these children, again, maybe to break down the Aboriginal culture, they were introduced to the Benedictine monks here and nuns to be educated, because their welfare was not the best supposedly in their homeland or where they lived around here in Perth. So they were taken and introduced to the Western ways, introduced to Catholicism, and to be made better people. Needless to say, pretty much a disaster. So this is St. Gertrude's College. I must admit I don't know too much of the layout of the new Norcia buildings. So we're going to try and find us way and have a look around to where the children were kept. We do believe that the children were all boys in one area and all the girls in another area. I'll actually link to a video which is very interesting, which is the children's version of events. It's called Habits of New Norcia. And I'm trying to find the buildings as to where they were kept, because they said they were imprisoned, and I believe them. So this area was first introduced or put together by a Spanish monk. So he came from Spain, obviously, and with the idea to provide a monastery or introduce a monastery and the Catholic way to here in Perth. And he had several habits, as in people helping him or priests who came together, and they slowly built what you see today. So they began to put together some quite impressive buildings. Like I mentioned before, they became very self-sufficient, so they grew all sorts of vegetables, I think some fruits, obviously grapes to make the wine, and I suppose had a slice of paradise here, so to speak. Okay, so this was the college for boys. Just reading from this, the foundation stone was laid early in 1909 and the school opened in 1913. Teaching at the college was conducted by the Marist brothers from 1913 until 1964. I'll struggle with the pronunciation, but it's St. Ildefonsus College, amalgamated with St. Gertrude's in 1975 and subsequently became known as St. Benedict's Boys' Residence. Like St. Gertrude's, the school was closed in 1992 and has since been used as a school camp facility. They don't say why it was closed. So you may have noticed as well with that photograph just there that all those boys were of white colour. No Aboriginal boys there, and I just wonder whether that was more of a, let's say, gimmick as to sell this place as a college as well. But I don't know the difference between when in the earlier days they had the Aboriginal boys and girls here compared to when they actually utilised this as a college then. so there must have been some time difference, but the sort of time frame we're talking, I believe, is early 1900s to mid 1900s. And trying to keep the bags shaded as well, so it's not too hot for when we get back on them. That's Catherine's bike and mine. I mean, there's some lovely buildings here, obviously of a certain age. And I suppose some people may say that the whole setup here, the whole organisation was successful and they did good things. Maybe they did, but they also allegedly did some very questionable things as well. So this chap here, he was the chap who actually founded the mission, and that's, I think, what it's mainly known as, the mission. Reverend R. Salvador. And I assume that he did build this place with the intentions of doing good. I will come to what not so good this place is maybe infamously known for. So part of the discomfort, and I'm putting that mildly, for these children was through the winter months when it was quite cold, and they had to pick the fruit, the olives, from these trees, or a significant amount of trees, on the hands and knees, picking up all the olives to make oil from. Now, I don't believe this is the actual building where the children stayed, but they did say that the windows were barred. Apparently they're not barred anymore where they stayed, but this is just an example of the type of bars what was on these windows. So I suppose I ought to say is that I'm no historian. I've just watched a couple of YouTube videos. I've seen a documentary on an Australian station, and whether it all was proven, all this, I'm not sure. So I'd have to suggest that maybe these are allegations. But what these children were saying, who are now adults, is that it broke them. Some people never really recovered from basically the abuse they had. Abuse such as not being fed properly, not receiving an education that they were told they would receive. They told their parents that they would have a better life, and it was best for the Aboriginal mums and dads to give up their children to here. Allegedly they were used for, as I mentioned before, the olives. A lot of, let's say, well, I'm going to say cheap labour, but if you're not getting paid for anything, that's not cheap, is it? You're not getting paid, so that's slavery. And a lot of the kids were beaten. The conditions were not very good. If, let's just say, they stepped out of line, they got beaten. Being in the tuition of the Catholic way, let's say, it was very strict. So if they didn't do as they were told, they were beaten. So it's a very sad and shocking sort of history. Some of the children did actually escape, let's say, and tried to get back home unsuccessfully. So they were recaptured, brought back here, and beaten in front of the other children as a warning to the others. So it's got a very checkered history of this place, really. I'm trying to keep an open mind, but when you see quite a lot of content that suggests this has a very dark history, it's quite upsetting. That's what made me want to film and produce this, basically. This is why it's a bit different, this actual episode. I've lived in Perth about 20 years roughly, and I'd heard of New Norcia. I had visited with Catherine once before on the bikes. We didn't film on that day a few years ago, and I don't think we both knew of the history of here. We knew the, let's say, written history, but not the spoken history. And I think that's very important. And I suppose the other things that these children endured was not just beatings, but not being nourished enough. So they didn't have a very good diet. They didn't have much of any good food. All the good stuff, which was all, like I mentioned before, grown here. It was all for the nuns and for the priests. I mean, some of the children actually said that they were either just given scraps that would have made their way to the chucks, or that themselves would go to the chuck bin and pick out fruit, bits of cabbage, offcuts, anything that they could particularly get some sustenance from. So they weren't very well fed. Occasionally, when they had someone important visiting, they would have a big breakfast. So they'd get up in the morning, they'd get down into the chambers for the dining area, and obviously this is all put on, but the people who were visiting were given the impression that these children were being educated, they were being fed well, and they were showing the way of God. I'm not going to go anywhere near religion as in for my opinion about that, but this is just what I've seen from these programs and from this YouTube video, which is actually a documented DVD. It can be purchased or seen online. I will put a link into the description so you can have a look yourself. And yeah, I feel quite strongly that I ought to put something together, even though mine's a small channel. If just one or two people in the world see this and get to know a little bit of the local history here, then for me that's job done. It's just my way of trying to highlight which was a very dark past a number of years ago, but being very much impacted by those children who are adults today. It's very sad. And I ought to say how I got to learn of this history in a weird way, actually. This documentary on a Australian broadcaster, SBS, they had a documentary called The Mission, and it starts out, it's 3 episodes, it starts out about this bungled art heist, which is from here. So a lot of people had never heard of New Norcia or what was here up until I think it was the 80s when this actual art heist happened. So I can't really go into details about that, it'll take too long, but basically someone had learned that there was very valuable works of art here, that they were within the buildings, and someone thought it upon themselves, collectively with other people as well, to come and actually steal them. And they actually just literally got knives, Stanley knives, and cut, because the frames were so big they couldn't lift them off the walls, so they just cut into the canvases and destroyed quite a few of them as well and took off with them. And that's how this program started, and about how who may have wanted to purchase all these works of art. And then in the final episode it then twists to telling about this other dark history, which is what I've mentioned today. So I think I've hopefully just given you a taste of maybe wanting to research a bit more about this. I can't tell you everything, I don't even know that much about it really. I just wanted to just bring it hopefully into a more of a very small but a public arena. Okay, so if you've watched all this vid, thank you for watching. It's much appreciated. A little bit different, and see you again soon. Bye for now.